The last thing I heard wasn't a confession of love, but the sharp crack of the apartment door sealing shut. A lingering trace of crimson lipstick smudged on the rim of a forgotten wine glass on the counter. And my name, Elias Sterling, crudely scored through on our shared kitchen calendar. A subtle but potent declaration of absence. What if everything you believed about your partner was merely a convenient illusion? Her laugh, faint and brittle, drifted back to me through the insulated walls. It was that cultivated, breezy sound she reserved for strangers, a performance of carefree vivacity that rarely surfaced when we were alone. And just like that, Kaylin Waters was gone again, a phantom slipping into the twilight. No note, no estimated return, but I knew precisely where her compass pointed, toward Callum Ashford's sprawling loft. It was where her past resided, etched into every photo frame, vibrating through every song on his curated playlists. This wasn't merely a gathering, it was an unspoken invitation for Kaylin to shed the version of herself that included me. Do you want to know what truly stung? She'd warned me. Maybe you'll finally react, she'd murmured hours earlier, her fingers deftly buttoning that scarlet silk blouse, the one she wore when she craved the intoxicating rush of being perceived as dangerous. Perhaps you'll remember, I'm still someone people desire. My lips remained sealed. They always did. I merely offered a vacant nod, like a puppet whose strings had long gone slack, applauding a play that had lost its narrative years ago. And this was far from the opening act. The telltale signs were painted across our life in stark, undeniable strokes. Her expensive fragrance clung to her longer than her flimsy apologies. Her phone battery possessed an uncanny habit of dying precisely when her nights stretched into the early hours. Our king-size bed had transformed into a sterile hotel room, a transient space she occasionally graced with her presence. Yet every morning, I still brewed her Colombian roast. I maintained our meticulously clean home. I dutifully collected her prescriptions and folded her delicate blouses with a care she no longer seemed to notice. Because I was Elias Sterling, the dependable anchor, the unspoken fallback, the perpetually good guy. But tonight, the script diverged. As the door clicked shut, I didn't reach for the cleaning supplies. I didn't construct elaborate excuses in the echoing chambers of my mind. I didn't scroll through faded digital memories, desperate to rekindle a spark of affection. Instead, my hand reached for the unassuming drawer in our hallway console, the one marked emergency only. Inside, there were no spare keys or stacks of crisp bills, just a single sealed envelope, bearing my own handwriting from 2 years prior. A letter, a pact I'd made with myself, marking the precise line I swore I'd never allow her to cross. And tonight, she had obliterated it. The paper felt impossibly heavy in my palm. I remembered scribing those words after one of our most brutal skirmishes, back when I still harbored the naive belief that arguments had victors. It wasn't a dramatic climax, merely another one of those nights when she'd casually labeled me boring, and I, predictably, had retreated into silence. I recalled thinking, if this cold, calculated cruelty ever becomes my normal, if this disregard starts to feel expected, then I will write something to remind myself that I once possessed a backbone, that I once mattered. So I tore it open. The letter began, "If you're reading this, she's not coming back tonight." And I understood why. She hadn't gone to Callum's party to merely catch up with friends. She went to twist the knife, to laugh a little louder, to dance a fraction closer, to sip her drink a touch slower, all to ensure I felt it. Not just the sting of betrayal, but the crushing weight of her absolute disregard. As if I were merely an inconvenient piece of furniture she didn't mind stepping over. I should have wept. I should have screamed until my throat was raw, or perhaps reached out to a friend. But I did none of those things. Instead, I methodically began to pack a bag. Not everything, just the essentials. My worn leather journal, a few changes of clothes, the spare set of car keys, the antique watch my father had given me before his passing. I paused, grabbing a solitary photograph. Not of Kaylin, not of us, but of myself. A younger Elias, smiling without a hint of hesitation. I crammed it all into a worn duffel and walked through the silent rooms one last time. She had left a playlist running on the Bluetooth speaker, something sultry, moody, undeniably seductive. I reached out and silenced it. The sudden, profound quiet felt more honest than any melody. Then I moved to the living room and carefully unhooked the framed quote she'd always professed to love. "What you allow is what will continue." A mantra she preached but never lived. But I was about to. I left three things behind. First, her elegant platinum wedding band. I'd found it weeks ago on her nightstand, discarded during a particularly venomous argument, never retrieved. I placed it squarely on her pillow, right in the soft indent where her head would soon rest. Second, a crisp printed photograph of Kaylin and Callum, one I'd discovered months ago buried deep in her old social media profiles. I'd kept it in a drawer, not out of morbid nostalgia, but as irrefutable evidence, not for a courtroom, but for my own searing clarity. And third, a single, concise note, not lengthy, not laced with anger, simply the unvarnished truth. You win. I won't compete anymore. Whatever you find at his loft tonight, I hope it's worth what you've just lost. Then I walked out. No grand plan, no predetermined destination, just gone. She wouldn't comprehend it until the music faded, until the alcohol blurred into a dull throb, and she eventually stumbled back in, expecting me to be precisely where she'd left me, as always. But for the first time, I wasn't, and I knew the exact moment she'd return. It was always around 2:14 a.m. I would be long gone by then. I didn't drive far, just enough to position my car across the street, a silent observer shrouded in shadows in the pre-dawn quiet. I parked discreetly behind a dilapidated gas station, killed the engine and cracked the window, letting the cool night air seep in. I waited, not because I yearned to witness her reaction, but because I needed to confirm she arrived home alone. That was the established pattern. She'd appear, smudged makeup, hair a little too artfully disheveled, heels dangling from her fingers, a lazy, triumphant grin plastered on her face, as if she were the star of her own private drama. But tonight would be different. I wanted to observe what the stark reality of betrayal looked like when it finally caught her. Precisely at 2:14 a.m., the porch light flickered on. I watched as her silhouette materialized, slightly hunched, fumbling for her keys. Her heels, just as I'd predicted, were clutched in her hand. She leaned against the doorframe, struggling with the lock, as if even the brass mechanism had conspired against her. Then the door groaned open, and she vanished inside. I didn't need to see what transpired next. I already knew. The note lay on the kitchen counter. The ring waited on her pillow, and the damning photograph was taped to the inside of the bathroom mirror. She wouldn't discover it until she attempted to wash the night away, until her mascara began to streak and the cold, harsh light of reality began its inevitable creep. My phone buzzed a mere 20 minutes later. "Kaylin, where are you?" Then a second message. "Kaylin, Elias, this isn't funny, come home." But it was funny. Not in a joyous way, but in that profoundly bitter, "this is what it takes to be seen" kind of way. Suddenly she noticed. Suddenly she cared. But only because I had ceased playing the convenient ghost she could unleash her frustrations upon. I didn't reply. Not to the third message either. "Kaylin, what did you do? Why would you leave like that?" And then the fourth. "Kaylin, Callum said you called him. What the hell did you say to him?" That one resonated differently. I hadn't called Callum. I hadn't messaged him. I hadn't even uttered his name aloud in weeks. But the sheer fact that she assumed I had, that carried weight. It meant something had indeed transpired at that party. Something she desperately wished to keep from me. Perhaps a confrontation, an unforgivable error, or perhaps the past she believed she could control had decided to remind her exactly who he was. A genuine smirk, the first in weeks, touched my lips. Let her sit with that gnawing uncertainty. Let her wonder which fragment of her scandalous evening had reached me first, because I had no idea what truly happened at Callum's. But now I was going to unearth it. And when I did, I wouldn't just be walking away. I would be burning every single bridge behind me. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I just sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel as if it were the last tether to a grounded reality. My phone lay face down on the passenger seat, vibrating with her increasingly desperate calls and texts every half hour. But I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't ready for her voice, dripping with either feigned confusion or calculated guilt, whichever mask she decided to wear. Because this wasn't about closure. Not for her. This was about control. She couldn't fathom the idea that I had simply departed without a dramatic scene, without warning, without begging for explanations. The truth was, I already possessed them. Here's what Kaylin didn't know. 2 days before that party, a message had popped up on my old social media account. It was from Nora Griffin, a former college acquaintance of Kaylin's. We'd never been close, but Nora knew who I was. She reached out after seeing a blurry boomerang Kaylin had posted, a glint of clinking glasses with Callum. The caption, "Some flames never burn out." Nora's message was succinct, but it seared a hole through my chest. You deserve to know she's planning something. He's not just hosting a party. He wants her back, and she's actively considering it. I hadn't replied. There was no need. That message was a match, and I was already soaked in gasoline. I spent the next 48 hours maintaining a facade of normalcy, all while quietly orchestrating my exit. But now with Kaylin's messages growing longer, more frantic, I understood I needed to escalate. At precisely 6:07 a.m., a message appeared that, for the first time, sounded genuinely raw. "Elias, please just talk to me. I think I've messed everything up." She was right. I waited another agonizing hour before formulating my response. Not a call. Not even a complete sentence. Just one piercing text. "Ask Callum about the photo. Then we'll talk." I pictured her, phone clutched in trembling hands, heart rate spiking, because now the control had shifted. Now she was utterly unaware of what I knew, or how I knew it. And in that precise moment, I became the unpredictable force. She didn't respond immediately. In fact, I heard nothing from her for nearly 3 hours. I imagined the silent storm raging behind the scenes. Perhaps she confronted him. Perhaps he merely laughed it off. Or perhaps, just perhaps, he revealed something she never anticipated. Something I was banking on. Because Nora had also imparted another crucial detail. Callum was reckless. He had a penchant for documenting everything. And if he had paraded Kaylin around at that party, if he possessed tangible proof, then it wasn't just betrayal. It was documented, irrefutable evidence. At 9:42 a.m., her call finally came. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was fractured, strained, like someone desperately attempting to mend a lie with Scotch tape. "Elias, please come home. I don't know what you saw. I don't know what you think happened, but it's not what it looks like. Just please call me back." What it looks like. Those words always, always screamed guilt. I switched off my phone and started driving. Not towards our house, but towards Nora's apartment. Because she had offered one final, critical piece of information before signing off. "If you ever truly want to know everything, I still have the messages she sent him." And I wanted to know everything, no matter the searing pain it inflicted. What would you risk to uncover the ultimate truth? Nora lived just beyond the city limits, nestled within a quiet apartment complex situated behind a perpetually shuttered bookstore and a pizza joint whose neon sign always flickered erratically. I hadn't seen her since Kaylin's college graduation party years ago. Back then, Nora was simply the girl in the faded denim jacket, who always chuckled at her own jokes and rolled her eyes at Callum as if she could detect his inflated ego from across the entire lawn. Now she appeared weary, like someone who had witnessed too much and carried the heavy burden of knowing it all. She opened the door before I could even knock, as if she'd been anticipating my arrival. No embrace, no superficial pleasantries, just a solemn nod in the kind of gaze that silently conveyed, "What you're about to see will irrevocably alter everything." I followed her into a sparsely furnished living room where a laptop sat open on the coffee table, its screen already aglow with a torrent of unread messages. "Before you utter a single word," she stated, perching on the edge of her worn couch, "I'm not doing this to orchestrate her downfall. I'm doing this because you, Elias, never deserved to be lied to. I remained mute. I simply sank onto the nearby armchair, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm, my hands cold and clammy, and nodded for her to proceed. The first screenshot was dated 3 weeks prior. Kaylin and Callum had been exchanging messages almost daily, not innocent, harmless nostalgia either. This was explicit planning, overt flirting, and most damningly, a deliberate rewriting of our marriage narrative. Kaylin, he actually thinks I'm just going for the music. LOL, if only he knew how truly boring he's become. Callum, you know my door is always open. You just have to say the word. Kaylin, this weekend might just be the word. My stomach clenched into a hard knot, but I forced myself to keep reading. Each message meticulously stripped away another layer of denial, revealing the raw, festering wound beneath. They discussed our home as if it were a suffocating cage. They spoke of me as nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. There were photographs, too, blurry, incriminating images. Kaylin, caught in a bathroom mirror, wearing that very red silk blouse I believe she chose for herself. Another of her perched on Callum's lap, grinning with the uninhibited glee of a teenager, while someone shouted for more drinks in the hazy background. And then, a brief video, a mere 4 seconds, but enough to irrevocably extinguish something permanent inside me. It was her, leaning in, kissing him. Not a fleeting peck, not a moment of drunken confusion, but a deliberate, practiced kiss. A kiss that screamed familiarity. A kiss designed to inflict maximum pain if I ever witnessed it. Nora paused the video before its conclusion. That was captured the night of the party. She had no idea he was recording. Callum finds it amusing to collect souvenirs. He forwarded it to a group chat. It's already been widely shared. I sat there, completely hollowed out. All this time I had convinced myself I was overreacting, that perhaps I was merely paranoid, that I had misconstrued the subtle signs. But now I understood. It wasn't that I wasn't enough. It was that she never once perceived me as someone she needed to protect. I was convenient. I was stable. And stability, she'd unconsciously decided, doesn't make your heart race until you tragically lose it. Can I keep these? I asked quietly, my voice sounding foreign, as if it belonged to someone else entirely. Nora hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I'll send them all to you. But Elias, what are you going to do now? I rose slowly, my legs trembling, yet something within my chest had solidified, transformed. Not into anger, not into a thirst for revenge, but into absolute chilling clarity. I'm going to give her precisely what she gave me. Nora didn't inquire about the meaning of my words, but I knew, because Kaylin believed she had returned home to silence. She had no idea the storm was still relentlessly approaching. By the time I returned to our apartment building, the morning sun was slicing through the blinds like it had a definitive point to prove. I didn't enter. I remained in my car across the street, engine off, watching the shadows lengthen and recede across our front porch. The same porch I had painstakingly repaired just last autumn when she'd mentioned it was starting to sag. Like so many things in our life back then, I foolishly believed that mending the small imperfections might somehow salvage the monumental ones. I was gravely mistaken. Her car remained in the driveway, unmoved since her early morning stumble back in. I could just discern her silhouette pacing through the living room, a phone pressed to her ear, one hand pressed against her forehead. Perhaps she had finally witnessed the video. Perhaps Callum had already informed her he'd disseminated it. Perhaps she had finally realized that people talk, and eventually the truth, like decay, finds its way home to rot. Regardless, she was undeniably unraveling, and for once I felt no pity, only a profound, unsettling calm. I waited until she eventually bolted from the house, a frantic blur of motion, keys clutched in one hand, phone in the other, likely rushing off to initiate damage control, probably heading straight to Callum's, to scream, to beg, to threaten. It didn't matter. I wasn't finished yet. I walked inside like a ghost revisiting the scene of his own demise. Everything appeared precisely the same, save for the frantic fingerprints of her panic strewn across the space. Cabinet doors agape, bedroom drawers half closed, the bathroom light still flickering from when she'd slammed it too hard. She was desperately searching for answers I had already carried away with me. But there was one more thing I needed to leave behind. Not another note, not a text message, but a video. I connected my phone to the living room television. I located the damning message Nora had sent, that brief, brutal clip of Kaylin kissing Callum, and quietly uploaded it to our shared home cloud. The one she never checked, dismissive of technology. I deliberately renamed the file April Groceries. It would sit there, innocuous, among a list of mundane household documents until the next time she sought to compile a shopping list or reference an old recipe. But when she opened it, it wouldn't be milk and eggs. It would be her, caught utterly off guard, casual, unashamed. I didn't do it to merely embarrass her. I did it because the truth should never be convenient to ignore. Afterward, I walked into our bedroom and took one final, lingering look. The wall still bore those framed quotes she once loved. Empty phrases about trust and passion that now read like bitter satire. I left the wedding ring precisely where it lay. I had no further need for it. Then I opened my email and composed one final message. Not to her, not to Callum, but to her boss. The subject line read, "Thought you should know. The body contained only the video. You might perceive this as petty, but I never told you about her recent promotion. It wasn't a reward for diligent work. It was a favor extended by Callum. And now her boss would witness the full, unsavory scope of her networking. Here's what no one tells you about corporate ambition." I closed the laptop, leaving the charger dangling on the counter, and walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I simply closed it softly, like someone who had finally grasped that silence can roar loudest when it delivers the final word. I spent the next 2 days cocooned in a cheap motel room off I-7, the kind of transient place where no one ever asks questions and the wallpaper peels like it's desperately attempting to escape the confines of the walls. I rarely left the room, preferring to stare blankly at the stained ceiling, listening to the incessant drone of passing trucks, and patiently awaiting the inevitable fallout. It didn't take long. On the second morning around 9:13 a.m., my phone erupted like a fire alarm. First it was her. 7 missed calls, then 9, then 12. She left a barrage of voicemails, some whispering desperate apologies, others barking furious accusations. The kind of raw chaos you expect when someone abruptly realizes they no longer hold the narrative pen. She no longer controlled the story. I did, and she hated that more than anything. Then came the text message that made me sit bolt upright in bed. "I've been suspended. My boss said, we need to reevaluate the professionalism of recent events." What did you do, Elias? What did I do? I simply allowed the truth to speak for itself. I never explicitly asked for her to lose her job. That decision originated from someone else entirely. But when you meticulously construct your career upon a fragile foundation of charm and manufactured image, a single, irreparable crack is all it takes for the entire facade to crumble. She never believed it would genuinely catch up with her. She always assumed she could effortlessly explain it away. But there's no explaining your way out of damning video footage, especially not when it originates from your own cloud storage, sitting neatly beside your meal plans and household receipts. A few hours later, Nora texted me a single stark line. "She's unraveling. It's happening." That evening, I finally reactivated my phone. Dozens of messages awaited me. Some from mutual acquaintances, a few from individuals I barely remembered. Most were some variation of, "Are you okay?" or "She said you just disappeared." I didn't respond. Not yet. But one message in particular caught me completely off guard. It was from Callum. All it said was, "You really think you won?" It almost provoked a bitter laugh, as if this entire devastating ordeal were merely a trivial game, as if systematically ruining a marriage, manipulating someone's spouse, and then shamelessly bragging about it somehow earned him a twisted gold star. But it was the subsequent line that lodged itself firmly in my mind. "She was mine long before you." All I did was remind her of that. Right there, that was the inconvenient, painful truth I had assiduously avoided for years. Kaylin had never truly left her past behind. She had merely attempted to cover it with a fresh coat of paint and optimistically labeled it growth. I was never the ultimate destination. I was merely a safe, temporary rest stop before her next predetermined detour. What I'm about to show you is banned in 12 countries. I didn't reply to Callum. I didn't need to, because tomorrow Kaylin would unearth the very last thing I had purposefully left behind. And it wasn't a video, nor a note. It was a meticulously crafted letter addressed directly to her parents. Kaylin's parents were never truly oblivious to her erratic behavior. They simply lacked the courage to acknowledge how jagged and sharp her edges had become. They always addressed me in that cautious, almost embarrassed tone, as if they knew I was tenderly holding something precious they had long ago carelessly dropped. And perhaps I was. Perhaps they recognized fragments of her they had simply learned to tolerate. But I had diligently tried to love. So when I penned that final, decisive letter to them, it wasn't born of bitterness or a desire for retribution. It was for clarity, for a definitive sense of closure, for the unvarnished truth. I disclosed everything, not in a cruel or vindictive manner, but with unflinching honesty. I meticulously laid out the timeline, the damning messages, the irrefutable video. I even recounted the party, the one where she had deliberately departed, solely to ensure I would feel the sting of her deliberate absence. I concluded it with a line I had rehearsed in my head for weeks, but had never possessed the courage to articulate aloud. I loved your daughter with everything I had, but loving someone who fundamentally doesn't respect you isn't noble. It's an insidious form of self-destruction. I am choosing peace now. I never received a reply. I didn't expect one. The truth wasn't for them to debate. It was for me, finally, to accept. A week later, I moved into a modest apartment on the opposite side of the sprawling city. It's nothing remarkable. A second-floor unit, with an uninspiring view of a bustling parking lot. There's a peculiar, persistent humming in the hallway pipes, but it's unequivocally mine. I wake to a profound silence that no longer screams Kaylin's absence. I brew coffee for one. I drift off to sleep without wondering whose attention she might be chasing tonight. And for the first time in countless years, I don't feel like I'm perpetually waiting to be chosen. I heard through Nora that Kaylin eventually quit her job and moved out of town. No forwarding address, no dramatic, tearful goodbye. She simply vanished, much like guilt does when it finally realizes it has no viable defense left. And me? I began writing again. Not poignant letters to myself, not melancholic notes secreted away in desk drawers, but authentic stories. Stories precisely like this one. Because there's an immense power in speaking your truth before someone else attempts to rewrite it entirely. And if you're reading this, if you've ever found yourself left in the desolate darkness, questioning your inherent worth, let me impart this crucial wisdom. Walking away isn't a display of weakness. It is, in its purest form, healing in motion.